Hello, welcome back to the channel. I've tried to record this intro now 3 or 4 times, so this is the one we're going with. I'm not doing it again, it's taking too long. This was a New Year, New Army project. I bought this army for myself as a Christmas present. It's now March. All I've done so far is build it, base it, and I've sprayed some of it. It's a 2000 point Troll Horde army. There's also a Troll Hag that is currently drying with some... There's a bit of green stuff where I need to fill some gaps and things like that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start like it's a new series on the channel, I suppose. We hit 300 subscribers, so that's great, I guess. Thanks. What we're going to do is we're going to take a unit, paint it up to a pretty tabletop plus standard. It's not going to be speed painted. We're going to try a lot of different techniques, try some different things. And I'm going to get it to match the rest of my orcs and goblins. I'll put some pictures of them up on the screen so you can see what kind of vibe we're going for. Once I've painted some units up, then I will do some battle reports and we'll see pros and cons of Troll Horde, talk about some tactics, and then maybe adjust the army a bit. This unit that I picked up here is the first one we're going to be painting. So in this video, we're going to be painting a unit of stone trolls. Alright, so I gave them a quick zenithal of AK buff. I mostly did this so you could see them better on the camera, but it does help a little bit just to get some extra tone in there. It also kind of maps out the next step because I'm going to be spraying them from underneath. So I'm going to be spraying this AK black red from the bottom up. And I'm going to be trying to hit all the areas that the zenithal hasn't hit. So I'm trying to get in on all the black areas. The reason I'm doing this is because I want a universal shadow. I've done this on all of my orcs and goblins. And it's a nice contrast, complementary colour to the green. It's also going to work really well against the blue that I'm going to put on these later because it'll make a nice deep purple in the shadows. If you don't hit all of the black spots, that's totally fine. Leaving a bit of black in there is okay. It'll just be a really dark shadow then. But yeah, that's what we're going for, a nice deep red shadow. Okay, so we've got the underspray done on all of the trolls. What we're going to do now is we're going to reinforce the highlight that I did with the zenithal. It's not a real zenithal that I've done on it, so I'm going to do this probably now. Like you saw there, I'm going to use deck tan. The reason I'm using deck tan is it's a bit of a greeny off-white, so it'll look nice with the blue over the top of it. I'm just trying to, like I said, reinforce this highlight, get it all across the shoulders, the top of his head, all the high spots really, kind of where the buff was from the original zenithal, but I'm leaving a little bit of the buff behind, just as a transition between the red and the deck tan. I'm also going to spray quite heavily on his belly. I'm doing this in a couple of coats, going quite slowly. Just because with a light colour like this, you really need to take your time when you're airbrushing. It's better to do a couple of coats. It dries so fast through the airbrush that it's worthwhile taking your time and doing a couple of coats to get it nice and smooth. Alright, so this whole bit was a bit out of focus and a bit off camera. That's why I've cut it down so small. But we're just going in with the final highlight of white. I'm just putting white ink through my airbrush. Again, with white, you need to go even slower than the deck tan. Couple of coats, really thin. Just take your time. Yeah, you want to get like a nice smooth white highlight over everything. Again, I'm going to make this highlight quite big on his belly, on his stomach. All right, so the white highlight is all done. We're going to start putting the blue onto it now. We're going to start off with 2 paints from AK, Dark Sea Blue and Archaic Turquoise. I'm going to do like a 50-50 mix of these. And I'm just going to spray this all over the model, into the shadows, into the highlights, just everywhere. I've thinned this down quite a lot, so it's going on as a bit of a filter. I've put a bit of contrast medium into the mix as well, so it's a bit translucent, because I want that work we did with the underspraying and the zenithaling to show through as we're spraying this. So I'm just going to go all over the model with this and get a nice even coverage. I might need to do a couple of coats on this. Probably no more than 2 though. 1 coat may actually be enough depending on how thin you make it. I think I ended up doing 2 coats in total. Okay, so the mix 50/50 mix is all done. And then what I did is I also went over the top from a zenithal position with another layer of archaic blue, just by itself with no mix. You can see it's giving me a nice effect with the purple shadows there from the mix of the blue and the red. It's not very visible from top down, but it is a nice effect overall. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to go in with some light sea grey, and I'm going to do the stomachs. You want this paint quite thin, so you have to be careful with airbrushing it, because it's going to be quite watery. And as you see here, I do go a little bit too heavy with it on this first pass. But I do a couple of layers of this to build up this colour over their stomachs and their chests, and I feather it out a bit around the edges. And it ends up looking fine. And I will go in later on with a paintbrush and do some more highlights. Okay, the stomach's all done. I think I went in with 2 layers over most of it. There was the occasional high spots where I went in with an additional layer, so 3 layers just to really make the layer as opaque as possible. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to reinforce the shadows. I'm going to go back in with quite a thin glaze of the black-red that I used in the beginning from AK. And I'm just going to go back again from the bottom up just to reinforce this colour. So that it's a bit more visible, because it did get washed out a little bit when I sprayed the blue over it. And I'm going to go across the whole model, and I'm even going to spray this into a couple of areas where there was no shadow originally, just to add a bit of colour variety. Because I think it looks nice, just adding that bit of red, a bit of purple here and there. Okay, so you can see the red, I've reinforced it in quite a few places, including over the top of the white stomach. And it's just added a lot of visual interest, and visual interest is the name of the game. And we're going to do the same thing with lime green, but this time we're not going to be putting it just in the shadows. We're not going to be putting it anywhere specific, really. We're just going to be targeting areas where you think a nice bit of green will break up the blue, the monotony of the blue, because it's all one colour at the minute. And these are, even though they're not swamp trolls, my entire Orc and Goblins force is from the swamps. So adding this bit of green makes them look a bit mossy, a bit swampy. And like I said, it just adds a bit of visual interest. So that's what we're doing. Just some nice patches across the model. And this is what we end up looking with. Don't worry, there's going to be some next steps. We'll bring this all together. Okay, so in the next clip, I forgot to turn one of my lamps on. But what we're going to do is we're going to put a really thin sepia wash over everything. And this is another one of those universal colours that I use for all of my Orc and Goblins. Again, it's to make them look kind of swampy, kind of gross. So what I'm doing here is I'm just going straight out of the pot with some sepia wash onto his shoulder there. And then I'm loading my brush up with some water. And I'm just going to water it down on the model. This way it also gives us different intensities of this colour across it as well. Again, adding some more variety across the model. Okay, so the sepia wash muddied everything a little bit. So what I'm going to do is just a really quick dry brush, just to bring the vibrancy back in. The only reason I'm doing this is because there's so much texture on the model, and it'll take a dry brush really nicely. Obviously, you wouldn't do this for a display piece. For a game piece, it's absolutely fine. And I'm going to use a mix of the archaic turquoise and deck tan that I showed there. And then, like I'm pointing here, I'm only going to go over the top parts of the model. So like the top of his shoulders, the top of his neck, his back, and his like a bit further down his hands, on his face. And I'm trying my best to go in an up-down motion. Because I don't want to put too much of this blue into any of the shadows or anything like that. And we're about halfway through the video. I'd just like to take a moment to give you a quick preview of the finished result. And also just to say thank you for sticking around for this long. And also asking if you could, like, comment, subscribe, all that kind of good stuff. I'd really appreciate it, and it would help a lot for the growth of the channel. Anyway, let's get back to the painting. Okay, let's do some actual painting. What we've done before is just set up now for what we're about to do next. For our palette here, I've got with the archaic turquoise, some deck tan, some ice yellow, and some sunny skin tone. And I'm going to be using these in combination with each other. And then I'm just going to make various mixes of one of the highlights or two of the highlight colors with the archaic turquoise. So on my brush here, I've got, I think it was the archaic turquoise deck tan with a little tiny bit of sunny skin tone in it. I'm going to be using the sunny skin tone predominantly across its face, just because it's got that warmth. To add to that, like vitality, I suppose, to make it look like he's an actual living creature. And what I'm doing here is it's a mixture of several techniques, I suppose. There's no one technique that is going to get the desired outcome. You've got to use like layering, feathering, a little bit of glazing here and there. And it's going to take a couple of layers, a couple of coats across this, and I'm going to be progressively adding more of the highlights into it, and eventually I will end up with the ice yellow as my kind of my top highlight towards the top of his head, on the top of his ears. Just to add, like, so it looks like there's the sun, I suppose. The ice yellow is that like light from the sun, the yellow light from the sun coming down, I guess, is the best way to describe it. So yeah, I'm just going across his whole face, picking out the high raised points and just highlighting it up. I had a bit of a technical error where I lost a bunch of footage. So you'll see what that looks like. And on here, I'm just edge highlighting the ridges on his back. Okay, so I had a bit of a technical disaster. I think I deleted some of the footage of me painting his face. So yeah, what I did was I just, like I said, I layered it up with layering, glazing. I tried to add some texture into there as well. I used a mixture of the archaic turquoise and the three highlight colors that I mentioned before, the deck tan, ice yellow, and sunny skin tone. I finished up with the ice yellow like towards the top of his head and the top of his ears. The sunny skin tone was used mostly across his nose and his face. To paint his ears and his gums, you can see there, it was the black red that I used for the shadow color, and I mixed that with some sunny skin tone as well up to that point, to the highlight level. And then for the teeth, I used German grey, I think it is, with some ice yellow up to highlight to that, and then his eyes are just a red with a dot of ice yellow in the center of them. Okay, so this is a quick update on what I've done to his stomach, because I didn't film it because I'm just not very good at this apparently. It's just I built up from the archaic turquoise and deck tan in various mixtures, and then I've used a bit of the original black red in the recesses around the scars and the pimples in its belly button and stuff. And then I'm going to go ahead and I blacked everything out, all the other elements. The straps here on his arms and his loincloth, I painted in with rhinox hide. And then what I've done is I've just mixed in a bit of the same deck tan. I'm just using it to highlight and create texture. Sorry, this is all a bit out of focus. Like I said, it's been a while since I made a video, and I messed this up as I was doing it. But like you can see, I'm just taking my time and I'm just putting a bit of texture in, do some edge highlights, just building with the highlights. I will go ahead and do another mixture of this. This was a mixture of about 50-50 of rhinox hide and deck tan to start off with. And then I went ahead and did another mix, which was about 25%, 75%, 25% rhinox hide and 75% deck tan to do the next highlight on it. And then I think I do go in and do an even higher highlight with just deck tan with like a little bit of rhinox hide added into the mixture. And as you can see, I'm just putting lots of little dashes and lines and dots just to build up the texture so it looks like worn leather. Okay, so I found a bit of better footage. This is with it's basically deck tan with like a tiny dot of rhinox hide mixed in, and this is like real-time footage of me painting it. And you can see I'm just putting lots of little lines. I'm not doing too many straight highlights, because I'm just trying to build up as much texture as I can to make this look interesting. And like I said, make it look like worn leather, because this troll's not going to have some fancy leather, is he? Okay, so I did a quick sepia wash over the top of the leather as well, just to tie it in with everything else. And then I'm going to start doing the wood, the handle of his club. I'm doing a 50-50 mix of Rhinox hide and Mechanicum standard grey. Just going to base coat it like you base coat anything. I'm not leaving any black in any of the shadows or anything. And then what I do after this is I draw the wood texture in with just Mechanicum standard grey, and then I gave it a wash with Seraphim sepia, quite a heavy wash. And now what you can see me doing here is I'm going back in and I'm redefining all of the wood texture. And this is all I'm going to do for the wood. You want to just use the very tip of your brush for this. And you want the paint reasonably thin, but you still want good coverage from it. Okay, moving on to the crystals. I have base coated everything that's crystal or stone in black red, just pure black red. What I'm going to do next with it is I'm going to do a 50-50 mix of black, red, and magenta. And I'm trying to get this crystal one there that I did a little test on. So this magenta and red, I'm doing a 50-50 mix of them. And we're just trying to get rid of most of the black red here. We're just leaving it in the very darkest, deepest recesses. We're trying to get this to look glow, but we're trying to make it look kind of a bit like glass, like crystal. So the contrast here is really important. So we want to try and keep the dark bits dark and the bright bits bright. So what I'm going in here with now is just pure magenta, getting in an even smaller area. If you notice the direction of the paintbrush, I'm always pulling it, dragging it in the direction that I want to leave the highlights, where the highlight will end up. So I'm pulling it away from the shadows. I'm doing this because, like I said, the shadows need to stay dark. So I don't want to leave a big pool of magenta paint in that area. I'm going in here with another highlight of, I think this is like 50-50 of magenta and ice yellow. And you need to do a couple of coats of this, because in the next step it's going to look quite stark, but it's because I've done a few different layers of it. So here I am, I'm going to be going in with an even brighter highlight. So this is probably going to be like 1 to 3 of magenta and ice yellow. And again, you want to do a couple of coats of this. Just re-going over the same highlight, leaving the area smaller and smaller every time, still moving the paintbrush in the direction of the highlight. That'll help with those transitions and make it look a bit smoother, even though you are just layering. You can do a little bit of glazing if you want. I think I do a little bit here and there, just mix a bit extra water in. Yeah, so I'm also, I don't know if you can see it in this video, but every now and again I'll put in I'm pointing out here. You see those lines on the top of the crystals? I'm doing this just to make it look like they're refracting the light internally, I guess, is what I'm trying to do. I don't know if I'm achieving that look, but that's what I'm trying to achieve with it. It just helps the overall look, I think. And then the final highlight here is just pure ice yellow. And I'm just putting this very selectively. This will make everything kind of pop, I suppose is the word for it. But you don't want to overdo it with this, because if you overdo it, it will just look a bit silly. And then the final step that I don't have any footage of is a very, very, very thin glaze filter of magenta that I put over everything, just to tie it all back together. It just knocks the highlights down so they don't look as yellow, and it brings the more magenta back into the shadows. But yeah, that's the look we're going for. There's only a few little details left to go, and then we'll be done. So I've applied an ultra matte varnish from AK, and now I'm just putting in the metallic bits. I'm using Vallejo metallic colour here. I'm not sure which one. It doesn't matter. With the ultra matte varnish, the metallics shine through really nicely. I also then give them a bit of a wash with sepia, just to bring them back in. And then we're done. This is the final result. If you stuck around this long, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And like I said, if you could like it, share it, comment, dislike, whatever you want. That'd be appreciated. See ya.